Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance from the 46th Separate Airmobile Brigade in Donetsk region detected the movement of a large column of Russian armored vehicles heading to assault Ukrainian positions. Ukrainian forces opened fire with mortars and artillery. Drone pilots were also deployed to intercept the enemy column. A hellish barrage of fire rained down on the Russians. Caught under such heavy fire, the Russian forces tried to dash through the shelling, but very soon they began rapidly losing their tanks and armored personnel carriers. The surviving Russian troops who managed to reach the ruins of the Ukrainian village began abandoning their armored personnel carriers and hiding among the damaged buildings. Ukrainian artillerymen continued to fire intensively in an effort to destroy enemy equipment and eliminate the occupiers. Aerial reconnaissance also spotted the movement of a Russian assault trooper on a motorcycle. Losing control, he fell into the mud, and shortly after, he was visited by a Ukrainian drone. Bomber drone pilots continued to carry out their mission, destroying abandoned Russian tanks and armored personnel carriers. Russian tanks that managed to break through the artillery fire were met by kamikaze drones. Here, a Ukrainian drone pilot makes a direct strike on a Russian infantry fighting vehicle. The powerful hit causes the Russian armored vehicle to immediately lose control and come to a halt. This is another Russian assault in Donetsk region. Here, Ukrainian pilots from the 429th Drone Regiment Achilles engaged the Russian forces. Two tanks that appeared on the horizon were damaged and were unable to continue moving. After that, the kamikaze drone pilots continued their hunt for Russian armored vehicles. The battlefield is filled with a large amount of abandoned, damaged equipment. There are many cases where the Russians launch assaults using already malfunctioning vehicles. By using such equipment, they have no guarantee that it won't break down on its own during the assault. However, even such damaged vehicles must always be destroyed. Otherwise, the Russians will tow them back, repair them, and use them again for assaults. Here, a Russian turtle tank, while retreating, ran over an anti-tank mine. The detonation was swift, and the explosion was extremely powerful. This tank is definitely beyond repair. This armored personnel carrier was supposed to transport Russian infantry to the tree line to drive out Ukrainian troops. The Russians were riding on top of the armor to quickly launch an assault, but unexpectedly, a sharp strike from a kamikaze drone hit the armored vehicle. Panicked Russian infantry began scattering and fleeing, but the Ukrainian forces were just beginning their work. The bomber drone quickly arrived at the armored personnel carrier and dropped several bombs on it, ensuring that the Russians couldn't escape anywhere. Upon receiving the coordinates, Ukrainian artillery began clearing the area. The kamikaze drone pilots began their safari. A group of Russian assault troops on quad bikes arrived in a Ukrainian village to take positions. A Ukrainian reconnaissance drone began monitoring them. Unaware of the surveillance, the Russians started occupying buildings. The reconnaissance drone passed all coordinates to Ukrainian artillery, which in turn began shelling with concentrated fire. The enemy quad bikes were destroyed. The Russian soldiers who found themselves trapped began searching for another hiding spot, but to their misfortune, Ukrainian kamikaze drone pilots arrived. The Russian assault operation ended in failure. Here, Ukrainian drone pilots intercepted a Russian convoy of armored personnel carriers and began delivering precise strikes. The first armored personnel carrier was successfully destroyed. Another Russian armored personnel carrier, due to poor handling, was flipped over. Ukrainian drone pilots seized the opportunity and destroyed the enemy target. After that, the hunt for Russian armored personnel carriers continued. The kamikaze drone pilots did excellent work in destroying the enemy equipment. Despite knowing the losses they've suffered, the Russians continue to launch assaults, fully aware that a single encounter with a Ukrainian drone could be their last. That's all for today, friends. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos, and share your thoughts in the comments. This material was prepared by Hustler. See you soon.